250 years ago, on the backs of indigenous and black Americans, an experiment began. Can an enduring government exist with no privileged classes, no standing army, no nepotistic leader, and no tyrants taking power? Can all persons receive equal rights, including equal voting rights? And can a government be led by the wishes of the majority be put into practice? All these questions and more constituted the American experiment. In this video, there are 5 different but interconnected reasons why the American experiment failed and why the US empire is collapsing right before our eyes. There's no spinning it. Americans have gotten dumber. Comedy films from decades ago, like Dumb and Dumber and Idiocracy, are current-day documentaries. Science, clinical and technical expertise, literacy, data, and so on have been replaced by misinformation, disinformation, propaganda, pseudoscience, and conspiracy theories. Not only that, but Americans are also fiercely anti-intellectual, and that sentiment has been growing. Americans are spending less time reading while spending more time on the screen, which is only making them even dumber. Having a dumbed-down society makes Americans even more violent than they already are, more susceptible to being manipulated by the corporate media, social media, political figures, etc. Having a dumbed-down society also means Americans crying and complaining about their corrupt politicians while electing the same politicians who are openly antagonistic to the working class they belong to. America is easily one of the most corrupt, if not the most corrupt, nation on earth. Elected politicians often see their net worth skyrocket through a multitude of legal ways.
President Trump revealed in mandatory financial disclosure forms that he and his family reaped in $2 billion in his first year in office. The president denies he's cashing in on the presidency, but that number is stunning, more than all the presidents in U.S. history combined.
This morning, new scrutiny on the president's personal wealth. Financial disclosures now revealing tens of thousands of securities trades during his first year back in office. The president's advisors executing more than 21,000 trades on his behalf in 2025 across roughly 1,600 companies, including tech giants and defense contractors. Among the holdings, dozens of companies with government contracts: Palantir, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, NVIDIA, Intel, even private prison operators. And on the same day the White House unveiled its artificial intelligence action plan last July, Trump bought as much as $5 million each in 6 tech giants directly affected by that policy.
I feel badly in a way for my kids because every time my kids do, if they invest in a stock or if they go and do a bill, anything they do, because the presidency is so powerful, so big, everything, if they buy a cupcake company, well, the energy to make the cupcakes is, sort of like, how's my energy policy? So therefore you have a conflict. Almost anything they do, if they want to buy a truck, if they want to buy, if they buy an energy efficient truck, they have inside information.
Bills and laws are written for wealthy donors, often at the expense of the working class, abroad and domestically. Politicians spend upwards of 50% of their time in office raising funds from wealthy individual donors, groups, corporations, and other sources.
A revealing look at how elected officials are being compared to telemarketers. The person you send to Congress may be spending a good chunk of their week, 30 hours to be exact, on the phone asking for money.
What has your party said about how members of Congress should raise money?
Well, both parties have told newly elected members of the Congress that they should spend 30 hours a week in the Republican and Democratic call centers across the street from the Congress, dialing for dollars.
30 hours a week?
30 hours is what they tell you should spend. And it's discouraging good people from running for public office. I could give you names of people who said, I'd like to go to Washington and help fix problems, but I don't want to go to Washington and become a mid-level telemarketer dialing for dollars, for crying out loud.
You're saying members of Congress are becoming like telemarketers?
Well, 30 hours a week, that's a lot of telemarketing, probably more than most telemarketers do. But
But the sheer amount of time politicians spend fundraising is not just embarrassing, it's horrifying. Some say that members can spend anywhere from 25 to 50% of their time on it. But former Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle once guessed that in the 2 years before an election, senators can spend 2/3 of their time raising money.
And it's not just sitting Congress people. Many politicians either wait for their tenure to end or simply leave early to work in the private sector, where even more financial lucrative opportunities await. There are even well-known terms for this level of corruption.
Hey, mister, what's this?
Oh, this? It's the revolving door.
Cool. What's it for?
A bunch of things, mostly making money.
Neat. I like making money.
At the end of the day, most of the people that I encountered who worked on Capitol Hill wanted to come work on K Street, wanted to be lobbyists. It's a way to put this all down. But first, I think most congressmen don't feel they're being bought. Most congressmen, I think, can, in their own mind, justify the system, rationalize. Yeah. And by the way, we wanted as lobbyists for them to feel that way.
But the best way to get a congressional office to do his bidding, he says, was to offer a staffer a job that could triple his salary.
When we would become friendly with an office and they were important to us, and the chief of staff was a competent person, I would say, or my staff would say to him or her at some point, you know, when you're done working on the Hill, we'd very much like you to consider coming to work for us. Now, the moment I said that to them, or any of our staff said that to them, that was it. We owned them. And what does that mean? Every request from our office, every request of our clients, everything that we want, they're going to do. And not only that, they're going to think of things we can't think of to do. So the people who make the reforms are the people in the system.
Could you do the same thing today? I'm asking you whether you think the system's been cleaned up.
No, the system hasn't been cleaned up at all. There's an arrogance on the part of lobbyists, and certainly there was on the part of me and my team, that no matter what they come up with, we're smarter than they are, and we'll overcome it. We'll just find another way through. That's all.
Groups that represent foreign entities overtly brag about having disproportionate influence and controlling U.S. politicians.
It's the infusion of foreign affairs that's taking the 2024 race into an entirely new phase.
I'm a firm believer that no candidate wins an election on their own.
What I love about AIPAC is that they get behind people and they win.
AIPAC comes in, it's like someone threw you a life raft.
This week, the group secured its first major victory of the election season. And fresh off of that victory, AIPAC has already set sights on its next target.
Well, you know what we got to say to AIPAC? Bring it on!
The results are in. George Latimer defeats incumbent Jamal Bowman.
Incumbent Republican Bob Good has been defeated by challenger State Senator John McGuire.
Missouri Democratic Congresswoman Cori Bush, known for being part of the Squad, will no longer serve in Congress next year.
To folks in the pro-Israel community, we have no choice but to stay engaged and stay in this fight.
You can create a global financial crisis that spans countries, stall the careers of aspiring young people for years, force the working class out of their homes and jobs, and still see no prison time. America is so corrupt that even the U.S. Supreme Court legalized it. Universities that pretended to be corners of free speech buckled quickly to the demands of both Republican and Democratic regimes. Law firms jumped over one another, offering their legal services to authoritarian U.S. regimes for free. Even law firms that at one time fought the regime in court ultimately caved. Corporations that once committed to employing environmental, social, and governance rolled those policies back. Social media companies that trained their algorithms to pump out right-wing content became even more unhinged, all the while suppressing left-wing content.
The buried lead of the October 7th was that it got TikTok banned. And remember, the TikTok ban stalled based on just China concerns. But TikTok was the hub of a lot of the anti-Israel sentiment that was brewing with Gen Z. And then all of a sudden the TikTok ban got resurfaced. Mitt Romney said at a security conference, "We are banning TikTok because it is sowing anti-Israel sentiment in the United States."
But I think it also has a very, very, very challenging effect on the narrative. Yeah, a small parenthetical point, which is some wonder why there was such overwhelming support for us to shut down potentially TikTok or other entities of that nature. If you look at the postings on TikTok and the number of mentions of Palestinians relative to other social media sites, it's overwhelmingly so among TikTok broadcast. So I'd know that's of real interest, and the president will get the chance to make action in that regard.
And the corporate media, looking to placate a regime hostile to any critique, sanitized their criticism and coverage of the regime, further diminishing both their obligations to the public and the public's trust in media. But it's not just organizations and institutions who've acquiesced to U.S. regimes. It's also the American people who did so. For decades, Americans allowed their U.S. empire to violate the rights of non-citizens abroad, and in return that same mistreatment has been aimed at Americans themselves, further eroding what little crumbs of freedom they believe they still have. The social contract in America has been broken for decades, and the American dream turned out to be an American delusion. And while America's deeply entrenched systemic racism exacerbates this issue, it all stems from capitalism as a failed economic system. As the rich keep getting richer, the wealth gap and wealth inequality between the working class and the Epstein class have reached their largest levels in U.S. history, and Americans see no way out. A majority of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. More Americans are becoming homeless. The government continues to hack away at critical social and economic programs for the working class while funding bills that enrich the Epstein class. Corporations consolidate into monopolies and oligarchies while raising prices for customers. America has nurtured an insolvent economic system that naturally runs a race to the bottom at the expense of the working class. Many now believe that the country is simply too expensive to live in, and what gets lost in all of this is capitalism's dehumanization and devaluation of human lives and loss of humanity.
Governor Newsom has issued an executive order for the removal of homeless camps in California.
We're going to just sit down and see what happens and talk to people.
It's 10:30 in the morning, and every corner shows the harsh reality of a drug and alcohol addicted society.
And I just moved here 2 days ago.
You just moved where? To just down here?
Yeah, it's my second day here.
On Skid Row, 50 or so squalid blocks in the shadow, downtown Los Angeles. One of the richest cities on earth.
Americans are some of the world's most asleep people. They are sleepwalking. They're on autopilot. America's elections are legally and openly corrupt. Its duopolistic political system serves the same masters. It's no wonder that the ceremonial elections have some of the lowest voter turnout. And in the age of American idiocracy, U.S. voters are so unread, unresearched, and politically tribal that politicians not only notice, but take open advantage. And it's not just voting. Americans are asleep and sleepwalking when it comes to holding their politicians and regimes accountable. There are laws that prohibit U.S. presidents and stooges in their regimes of being charged with war crimes. Expounding on this, Americans also don't demand that their politicians, corporations, institutions, and organizations be held accountable. Politicians regularly lie to voters and do whatever they want to advance the interests of the Epstein class at the expense of the American working class. Corporations scam the working class on both ends, employee and customer, and institutions like the U.S. Supreme Court and the corporate media are so detrimental to the working class that even among a sleepy and apathetic U.S. population, America's trust in these institutions are in the toilet. Empires throughout human history have fallen for exhibiting the very symptoms that the U.S. inflicts on itself. Whether it's an American population that's getting increasingly dumber, rampant and open political and economic corruption, the state's persistent attacks on individual and civil rights, usurping more power, capitalism enriching the Epstein class at the expense of the working class, or America's apathy to holding their rich and powerful accountable, there's no doubt that the American experiment is a failure, and with the U.S. empire's rightful collapse, history finds a way to repeat itself.